Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.
Warning. The following live stream is intended for an uncommon audience. Those suffering from religious cellulitis, idiotic use of the word scientism, or geoplanetary flatardation are advised not to watch any further, as this could result in symptoms including feeling triggered, loss of wokeness, or the need to comment in all caps. However, if you think bold ideas are righteous, unique perspectives are gospel, and strong opinions are sacred, then we say hallelujah. This is Non Sequitur. Never follow. And now, here are your hosts, Kyle Curtis and Steve McRae.
Came in at the end, debated, and then said, "Hey, do you mind if I sing for you guys as an outro?" And I said, "Are you kidding? Yes." Okay. Sorry, I was in the middle of a story and I could not stop, so I had to get that out. But welcome back to Non Sequitur. I'm Kyle Curtis. Steve McRae is, I think, to my left today. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
Still alive. Did you see that hashtag replace Steve is trending?
Is it? You guys just taking bets on my future of living by the end of the week, aren't you? And by the way, again, if I die, contact me via your cell phone, and I'll tell you.
We're going to talk about that.
Think of you.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. And David is producing as always, that voice in the back. And we have joining us, you probably saw him recently because he was here it's been 2 or 3 days, I think. It seems like a lot longer, but Dr. Robert Sungenis is back again with us. Hello, Dr. Sungenis.
Hi, Kyle. How are you?
Excellent. Welcome back, sir.
Good.
And also joining us, the face you can never forget, Allegedly Dave. Hello, Allegedly Dave.
Hello. I'm not sure why I'm the face you can never forget, but you know.
I would say more the voice.
Yeah, it's allegedly nice to have you back, sir.
Yeah, I saw what you did there.
Thank you. So, okay, let's get to what we have coming up for the week. First, a bit of bad news. As many of you know, I was looking forward to tomorrow's encounter with the people from Soul Phone, and I got an email this morning saying that the gentleman's wife's father had passed away, and so we do wish the best for his family in that situation. He didn't cancel. We are going to be still doing that show. It's going to be on the 23rd now instead of tomorrow, but still a little disappointing. But in those situations, what can you do? So we will be back with them on the 23rd. We're still going to figure out something with tomorrow. So if you guys out there have any ideas, please let us know. Just kidding. Okay, let's go to what we've got coming up for Wednesday. And that's going to be Dr. Misha Griffith. She's going to be doing a presentation on Cold War dissidents and how they helped save several lives. It's a very fascinating story. I've been brushing up on it. It's going to be Wednesday at 8 p.m. And on Thursday, we have a gentleman that I actually met on Twitter, but he's running for president. There's no slide for this one, so if you're still looking at the same one, this is why. But he's running for president in 2020. His Twitter handle is the Caliph of God, and he has some very interesting views on things that I think will be fascinating to listen to. But we wish him well on his candidacy for president, and who knows, if Trump can win, literally anyone can win. So, and then we move to Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, the debate that is 2 years in the making between Red's Rhetoric and Jeranism. They did a debate 2 years ago, didn't end so well. They haven't spoken. Well, Steve, have they spoken since? Besides, back and forth through videos. You're muted still. Okay. No, so this will be them coming back for. It's a big deal. So we're looking forward to having both of them here on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Can you hear me, Kyle?
I can now. Yes.
Okay. God, I don't know. That was weird, but no, I don't think they've had any contact with each other.
I can now. So all right, we'll get into tonight's debate. Before we do, Steve, no more news from the.
No, not nothing today. No phone calls, no text messages, no nothing. So maybe
Okay.
he's taking the day off from harassing us, I guess.
Good. So I'll postpone my American Idol search for a little bit.
If you replace me, find somebody that can sing.
I will, totally. Allegedly, Dave said that he could, so maybe him.
No, I don't think so.
So let me go ahead and tell you guys how this will work. We will have a total of 4 timed rounds. We'll do each 10 minutes. The first round for them to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Dave. He'll introduce himself and where he stands on the position. Then we'll go to Dr. Sungenis for 10 minutes. We will come back to Dave for another 10 minutes, and then back to Dr. Sungenis for another 10 minutes. After that, it will be an open, free-flowing conversation between the two of them to ask each other questions and have a discussion that way. And then at the end of that, we will have any questions that you guys have. Of course, read all of the super chats. They are all read on the show, and that will be it. So without further ado, we will start the discussion. And allegedly, Dave, sir, the first 10 minutes is for you to kind of say hello again to everyone, and then tell us why the Earth is flat.
Okay, I'm Dave, known as allegedly Dave, and I got into the flat Earth because I watched a video which introduced me to the curvature calculation, and it basically told me that let's step back a second. The curvature calculation is 8 inches per mile squared to find how much the horizon will obscure any object that is at a certain distance away. So armed with that calculation, because I thought, well, hang on, that calculation sounds or makes the Earth sound very small. So I went out looking for curvature, and I think my first stop was in England, a place called Plymouth. There's a lighthouse which is 8 miles away from shore, and I was looking at this lighthouse from almost at the water level, and I could still see the bottom of the lighthouse, and that was 8 miles away. Now, and I can't remember offhand what that calculation is, but it should be something like 16 or 32 feet below the horizon at that distance. But I could still see it. So I went around looking for all sorts of things that I shouldn't be able to see. And surprise, surprise, I could see them. I eventually got myself a Nikon P900 camera, and I was bringing boats back that were supposedly going over the curve. So I got kind of hooked at that point. So I started looking at other things such as gyroscopes, and finding that gyroscopes are showing that the Earth is stationary, and it's obviously not moving. So we have gyroscopes in aircraft that show that gyroscope in an aircraft in the artificial horizon that is spun up when that aircraft is on the ground, so it gets a reference to the ground, and when it starts in straight and level flight, when the plane starts to go over the curve of the horizon, over the curve of the Earth, the gyroscope should stay upright because it's got a property called rigidity in space, and it should appear that the artificial horizon is rolling backwards, right? But it doesn't do that. So I mean, I started looking at all sorts of different things, including looking at NASA, which is the only proof that we're on a spinning ball, and finding everything that NASA puts out. Every time any of us start looking at NASA footage, we start finding mistakes. Things like, while you have a trio of astronauts bobbing around, you see a water drip in the background. You see bubbles in so-called space. You see all sorts of anomalies, especially green screen anomalies. where they shouldn't have to use green screen at all. So, and every time you try and look for any proof of the round Earth, you can't find it. So it goes against, what we naturally believe about this Earth. We have senses that tell us how this Earth is laid out. We see, stand on the beach and we look at the sea. It's flat. Yeah, our senses tell us that we aren't moving. We have senses to tell us if we're moving or not. And I know we're told that, or I know we're supposed to only sense acceleration, but the Earth apparently accelerates and decelerates in its orbit, because it's not a circular orbit; it's an elliptical one. So there's acceleration and deceleration, but we don't feel it. We don't see the effects of that acceleration and deceleration. So everywhere you look, you cannot find any proof of the flat Earth. We have to take the word of experts, so-called experts, especially at NASA and all these space agencies. But if you cannot rely on what they're telling you, then how reliable is it? You cannot take that any evidence they produce, as truth. So when you actually look into, the origins of this round Earth idea, you find that it's the same players from the same clubs, secret societies, who 500 years ago got together and basically put this idea out. And I know it goes back a little further than that, a lot further than that, but you'll find that the forerunners of those same secret societies, had members who were pushing the same idea. So it just turns out that the same people who created this round Earth, spinning ball lie, and the theory of evolution and the Big Bang theory, are the same ones who are currently ruling this Earth today. And that's the primary reason we've got this round Earth system, because if you believe in this round Earth evolution Big Bang universe, then it doesn't leave any room for a creator. And when you take away a creator, that allows so-called powerful people to insert themselves above you and rule you. But if you know that this is a created place, which is what the flat Earth eventually or inevitably leads you to, then there's a creator, and you are the chief of the creations here. So that means there's nothing in between you and the creator, and so nobody can insert themselves and tell you, above you, and tell you, do as we say, because we're more important than you. So that's the true basis of why we have this ball Earth lie. I'm just an ordinary bloke here. I'm not an expert in anything, but one becomes an expert in things because of the passion you have to find out why. And this is what thousands of people around the Earth, still stuck in the old world lingo. Thousands of people across the plane are sort of becoming, because when you have a passion for something, passion for learning, you pick up all this information and it sticks with you. So that's really all I've got to say on, as an opening argument, because I'm just an ordinary bloke, but these proofs are evident when you look for them.
Okay. All right. That was about 7 minutes. So, Dr. Sungenis, next 10 is for you.
Okay. That Freudian slip you just had.
You know what? I got to point it out because I feel bad, because I want to be clarified. You I think you did make a Freudian slip that you had said that there's no proof of the flat Earth. Did you mean the round Earth, Dave?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I don't want to mischaracterize. I feel bad him saying that. I was laughing, but
look, I've got 55 years of programming to overcome. So
I hear you. I just want to get you on record, and that's fine. To clarify that. I don't want to misquote or straw man anybody. Go ahead.
I was actually talking about the other Freudian stuff.
Oh, was there more than one? What was the other one?
You missed that one, Steve. He said when we go around the Earth. He said.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I heard that one. Yeah.
You can go around the Earth like that.
I heard that one.
Oh, yeah.
The other one was the other one. There's no proof. He said there's no proof of the flat Earth. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Dr. Sungenis, your 10 minutes starts now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I've listened to a lot of flat earthers, and I enjoy listening to Dave because I think you guys all come out pretty much of the same mold, and that is you have some good points, you have some bad points, and I'll get to the bad points in a minute. But the general statement I want to make is that each generation really has to struggle with what they've been taught, and they have to ask the $64,000 question: has what I've been taught true or false? And some issues rise to the surface a lot faster than other issues, and those are the issues that we deal with. The flat Earth has been one of those for about the last more than 125 years. It's risen to the surface. I don't know exactly why, but it is one of those issues where each generation really has to work it out for themselves, and there's going to be debate back and forth about this. Even though some people think it's obvious on one side or the other. So, I appreciate the exchange, but again, this is just part of being human. We have to struggle with these things, and sooner or later we're going to come to some resolution. But right now we're in the struggle. Let me just remark on a few things he said because I think they're good talking points. For example, he talked about boats that he saw disappear over the horizon, and then when you use any kind of magnifying instrument, telescope or P900 or some good binoculars, you can bring the image back, and that is certainly true. But that doesn't prove the Earth is flat. All that proves is that a device that can magnify the scene much further than you can see with your unaided eye is going to bring back into focus at least some of that image. Now, the problem, though, with that is it never brings back all the image. It will bring back a good portion of it, but there's always a portion that is really beneath the horizon that you can't bring back. And the farther that boat goes out to sea, the worse it becomes. You reach a point where your binoculars or your telescope may not even be able to bring back that boat because it's so far out. And if it does, it's either going to be out of focus, or you're going to see that most of the boat is above the horizon, but there still is a portion that is below the horizon. And that's the key issue. Why can't this magnifying device bring back the whole boat? You see, that's the issue that the flat earthers have to answer. So let me go on. Does somebody have a question? No? Okay. Maybe I'm hearing things. Okay. So, and he talked about gyroscopes, and especially gyroscopes in aircraft. I've dealt with this a lot. I've talked to professional pilots who are certified, and they say, answering this question is like answering the question of whether you stop beating your wife. Whether you answer no or yes, you're going to get into trouble. And the reason for that is this. There are devices in aircraft that are very sensitive machines, and they use what they call pendulous vanes. And these things, pendulous vanes, are very sensitive, and they will determine any kind of change in the gravity potential or any kind of change in the inertial forces that are around the Earth. And both of these things, namely the Coriolis force, working with gravity, both of these things will affect these machines in aircraft. And so that those pendulous vanes will move just very slightly, and as they do, they will cause the plane to level out over the curvature of the Earth. And it's so minute that you cannot tell that that plane is adjusting to the curvature of the Earth. And the pilots will admit this. They know the machines are there. Not many of them know how they work, but they do work, and they're adjusted just that way so that they do calculate the curvature. And even if you have a gyroscope, Dave, I think, is talking about the fact that the gyroscope will stay in one position. Well, that's because of the Coriolis forces. There are 3 directional forces in the Coriolis force, and each of those 3 keep that gyroscope in the position you point it. But that Coriolis force changes as you go around the curvature of the Earth. And so the plane has to adjust to that. Even though the gyroscope itself is going to stay in one position, the plane is having different Coriolis forces on it and different gravity forces, and it will have to adjust to those. And that's what those pendulous vanes do in that machine they use to keep everything, so that the plane stays at the same level above the Earth. So dealing with the NASA issue, I understand why people have gripes about NASA. As a matter of fact, I was on your show a couple days ago, or no, was it last week? I was with Subarats, and we were talking about NASA. And there's one story that I wanted to relate to. I think is pretty apropos here, and that is, and I don't know if I did mention it or not, but there was a discussion between Eric Dubay, who was a flat earther, not a Christian flat earther, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Did I mention that on the other show?
You did not.
No? Okay. So Neil deGrasse Tyson goes up to Eric Dubay, because they happen to be in the same room somehow, and says, what would convince you that NASA went to the moon? It actually landed a man on the moon. And Dubay comes back and says, I want to see the equipment that they supposedly left on the moon. And deGrasse Tyson says, no sweat, no problem. Takes him over to his computer, starts dialing in to the website, brings up a NASA website that has the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbital Camera and the pictures that this special camera is supposedly have taken of the moon surface. And he shows the picture to Dubay, and Dubay looks at it and he says, I don't see anything there. They could have faked this, they could have made this, that, and the other thing. And Tyson gets so frustrated that he says, that's it, I give up. There's nothing that's going to convince these flat earthers. So I got curious, and I went to look at these photos at the NASA website. And I looked at them, and you know what? I would have had the same reaction that Dubay did. I would have said, this doesn't prove anything, because all they have of these pictures, one of the pictures is supposed to show you the lunar rover, right? And all you see, literally, is a white rectangle in the place where the lunar rover is supposed to be. And Tyson's trying to convince Dubay that this is the lunar rover when you can't see anything of the lunar rover, no detail whatsoever. Now, I find that quite ironic when you go on, in comparison, when you go on Google Earth and you zoom down to your own hometown, and then you get closer and you can see your own house. You can actually see the tiles on your roof, and sometimes you can see the bushes and the trees in your own house, and you can even see your own car parked in the driveway, okay? That's amazing that a camera hundreds of miles up can actually zoom in and see where I live. And yet this Lunar Reconnaissance Orbital Camera, specially designed by NASA to take photos of the lunar surface so that we can see what's there, actually shows nothing. There's not one piece of equipment that they show. All of it's covered by either white circles, white squares, or white rectangles. And so, who's pulling the wool over whose eyes here? So, I understand NASA can do certain things, but here's the bottom line. Because NASA may fib here, fib there, that doesn't mean they're fibbing about everything. That's a logical fallacy, you see. And that's something that you really can't take for granted. You have to understand that, we do live in an evil world. We do live in a world where people make up things to make money, to get fame, and all this stuff. But it doesn't mean that everything they do or say is a lie. You'd have to have a lot of proof for that. You just can't have some piece of evidence that says, oh, here's where they lied, or here's where they flubbed it up, and then make a conclusion of that, okay? For example, we have satellites, and Dave, we were talking about this Steve, talking about this the last time, at Lagrange point 1, which is actually 930,000 miles away. We have the Discover satellite there. Now we have the SOHO satellite there. That's 1,000,000 miles away. At Lagrange Point 2, we have the Wilkinson probe out there taking pictures. But we don't need to be that far away to take pictures of a spherical Earth. All we need are actually weather satellites. Weather satellites are 22,000 miles above the Earth. And that is almost what? 1 or 2.5 times the diameter of the Earth. Okay, so the diameter of a spherical Earth is 8,000 miles. These things are 22,000 miles away. That's a pretty long way.
20
And
seconds.
they're, yeah,
20 seconds.
20 seconds. And they're able to take pictures of our spherical Earth. And as far as, the Earth moving and all that, well, I'm on your side, Dave. I'm a geocentrist. I don't know if they told you that or not, but I don't believe the Earth moves. I don't believe it rotates. I believe the universe rotates around a fixed Earth, and I can prove that dynamically, that is with physics, and also geometrically.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Dave, next 10 minutes is for you whenever you're ready.
Okay. Well, you seem to say or kind of hint that, almost like there's some kind of problem with us flat earthers, that, we're looking for something to give our lives meaning or something. I didn't want to be a flat earther. Yeah. I didn't want to subject myself to this ridicule. Not only ridicule, threats of physical violence even. I wasn't asking those questions before I stumbled across a video, which wasn't a flat earth video, it turned out. It was just talking about scientific experiments. I wasn't asking those questions. I stumbled across a bit of information and I wanted to check it out. And it led to the flat earth. That was it. Now, you mentioned when I told you about the curvature or not finding a curvature and being able to zoom into to a ship that supposedly went over the horizon. Well, that idea of a ship going over the horizon to one's naked eye is a 500-year-old proof. It was the first proof that the Earth was a curve. Okay. So everyone would say, yes, you can stand on a beach and watch a ship go out to sea and watch the hull disappear first and then the mast. Yes, okay. So with our naked eye, yes, we all believed it because that's what we see. But now that we have the technology to actually look and see, well, no, that 500-year-old proof does not stand up. Now, you mentioned that, yes, you cannot see after a certain distance. It appears that the bottom of the boat is obstructed. But what you actually see when you actually see it with a P900 or any such camera, what you find is there's an atmospheric effect. I think it's called a fata morgana, where the top of the ship is reflected in a narrow band, which hides the true horizon, right? And you get a false horizon at the bottom of this effect, and you get an inverted image of the top of the ship. So it looks like, the ship is going down, especially when that Fata Morgana gets large compared to the size of the ship, as it gets further away. Then you see the mast get reflected and it looks like it's just the mast. But literally what's happening is that you've got this atmospheric effect hiding the true horizon and the rest of the boat. We can see that when we look, again, zoom in on the last part of any part of land that's going into the sea. Yeah, if you zoom into it, you see this band giving the effect of floaty land floating over the sea. Obviously, land doesn't float over the sea. It's literally being reflected, and you've got the false horizon that looks like the sea, and you've got this floaty land above it. So no, that's, your ideas there don't hold up. Now, you also mentioned the gyroscope and the pendulous vanes. Well, you know, at first, when I started looking at this, I didn't believe the pendulous vanes worked, but I looked further into it, and sure enough, I held my hands up that, yeah, you know, those pendulous vanes could work, and they probably do work. But the fact that they have to use pendulous vanes prove that the gyroscope is rigid in space. Okay, so there is a static experiment. It's done by a guy called Rob Durham, and he has one of those high precision electric gyroscopes, and he sets it on the table, and its position is marked, and he sets it going for 6 hours. Now, in 6 hours, the Earth should have turned about 90 degrees. And so the gyroscope should move accordingly because it's rigid in space, but it doesn't. So again, that proves that the Earth isn't moving, yeah, and it also suggests that the pendulous vanes aren't actually being employed. Just because they have these pendulous vanes doesn't mean they're actually working when the plane is actually, you know, flying so-called straight and level. So-called straight and level. Yeah, I'm trying to rush through my points here. I don't know what time I've got.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah, you also mentioned Coriolis effects on planes. Well, you know what? Coriolis effects, you know, do not work on planes. You know, when you fire bullets at long distances and artillery shells at long distances, well, apparently you've got to take Coriolis effects into account. But planes, well, they're in the air for much longer, and you know, they don't take Coriolis effects into account. You know, i.e., you don't fly north to go west. You know, that's the thing. It's, you know, so conflating Coriolis effects and planes doesn't work. Another point, you said, this was a very quick reference you made about these Coriolis effects, and I can't remember how you phrased it, but they allow a plane to maintain the same height above the Earth. Well, it's not, you know, it's what's maintaining the plane's height above the Earth are the plane's control surfaces, which have no relation to the ground. It has only a relation to the air that it's moving through. So that's why if a plane was flying through the air, you know, over a curved Earth, then if it was flying straight and level, it will, you know, end up in space. You know, it would have to dip its nose. I think if a plane is flying at 640 miles an hour, it would have to dip its nose more than a mile every minute in order to stay around the curve. But again, it doesn't. So again, you can't say, oh, well, it sticks above the Earth because of some relationship it has to the Earth. No, it's again, it's its control surfaces that that determine its pitch and its height above the Earth. Okay, you also mentioned about you know, the moon landing and what would convince somebody you know, that the moon landing was real. I would say that if there was a camera left on the moon that had 24/7 live stream from the moon, yeah, that would convince me. But you know, for some reason, nobody in 1969 thought that might be a good idea. But you know, there you go. You also said that NASA might make a fib every now and again. Well, no, NASA lies at every opportunity. As I said, every time you scrutinize any of their footage, right? You sit there long enough. Sometimes I've sat and watched NASA videos for 3 hours at a time. Right? You sit there long enough, you will see a mistake. You will see something that should not happen in zero gravity. You will see things like green screen glitches. There's one famous one that's came out recently where you see 3 astronauts and they say goodbye, but the camera lingers on them a bit too long, and all of a sudden their outline the colors bleed across all their outlines, and you see the green screen around the edge. Definitely a green screen glitch where they switched it off a little too early. There's tons of these things. Every time you look, you find the mistakes.
1 minute, Dave.
Okay, the last thing I'll talk about is satellites. I've got lots more to talk about them, but I'll just give one point. We can lie in a field at night, at midnight, and see satellites, apparently satellites going overhead. Well, I drew a picture of the Earth to scale and drew 2 lines around the Earth, circles around the Earth, one at 99 miles, the limit of the lower limit of low Earth orbit, and another at 1,200 miles. Well, you know, the 99 mile was like, you know, a few millimeters, and the 1,200 mile was about 2 centimeters. Right, so when the Earth is in shadow, so you've got the sun one side of it, the Earth is in shadow. Any satellite in that band, which is where most low Earth orbit satellites are, well, you cannot see them because they're in the Earth's shadow, and satellites don't have lights on them. So there you go.
Okay, and Dr. Sungenis, this will be the last 10-minute round, and then we will go into a open format discussion.
Great. Okay. Dave first started off saying that I either said or implied that he was doing this to give his life meaning. I did not mean to say that or imply that. If I did say it, I don't remember saying it. So I trust your motives are pure, Dave. And I would not try to stick that kind of label on you that you're just doing this out of, you know, fame or fortune or anything else. So let me lay that to side if you don't mind. Now, dealing with the ships over the horizon, you know, I find it interesting when flat earthers are confronted with this fact that ships eventually will go beneath the horizon. And then they will invoke the mirage effect and say that what we're really seeing is a mirage. I find that interesting because when the issue of looking at the Chicago skyline is brought up from the famous Joshua Nowicki photos, he saw the Chicago skyline from the other side of Lake Michigan at Grand Mere State Park. When the solution to this problem was brought up by Tom Coombs that it was a mirage, all the flat earthers were saying, "Oh, it's not a mirage. You know, you can't answer it that way because a mirage has 4 levels, and this is the Fata Morgana you were talking about, by the way. It has 4 levels, and one of them is inverted, so you can't use that because we see the buildings as they are, straight up and down, with no inversion at all. But then when it comes to the boats, well, the way the flat earthers explain the boats is what really happens here is a Fata Morgana, and you have the inversion, and that's what you're looking at. You know, so I find this kind of playing one side against the other a little contradictory and a little disingenuous. Okay, so now the thing about the boats is, I mean, to me, it's a logical fact that the further the boat goes out, or farther the boat goes out, let's say it goes out, you know, 100 miles. Okay. Are you telling me that you're still going to be able to see this boat with your P900? Or let's say we got the Mount Wilson telescope. That's a 100-inch telescope. And let's say somehow we mounted that so that we could watch this ship go out 100 miles. Now, if the Mount Wilson telescope can see out into outer space millions of miles, surely it's going to be able to pick up a boat 100 miles away. But the fact is, it can't. No magnification we've ever had has been able to see a boat beyond, say, 70 miles or so, no matter how powerful it is, because eventually that boat does go below the horizon and the story's over. Okay, that's the thing that you have to answer. Now, you talked about the gyroscope, and you says it stays in the same position, and I agreed to that. Okay, and the reason for that is because the gyroscope is not being controlled by gravity. The gyroscope is being controlled by the Coriolis forces, and they have 3 directions to them. That's why it always stays in the same place. So, because if you're going to use a gyroscope, the natural question to ask you is, okay, Dave, what makes the gyroscope stand in one place while everything beneath it is moving? You don't have an answer for that. The answer is that it is the Coriolis force. Okay, that's the only thing left to control that thing, and it's a force that's orthogonal to the centrifugal force. So we know it has to be behind the gyroscope. Now you were saying that where is it here? You said the Coriolis effect does not affect planes. Well, that's exactly what I said. It doesn't affect the plane; it affects the gyroscope. What affects the plane is the gravity, the pendulous veins inside that machine that keeps that plane level, that is at the same height above the earth. That's all controlled by gravity. The reason you don't see the horizon falling back is it happens very slowly. That was my major point, that the horizon goes back very slowly because the effect of the gravity on these pendulous veins is very small. You can measure it in minutes, and you hardly see anything because the plane is moving so slow compared to the size of the spherical Earth. Okay, so let me just make that clear. Gravity affects the plane. The Coriolis force affects the gyroscope, and that's why the gyroscope can be in a different position than the plane is when the plane is adjusting to the gravity of the Earth as it goes around the spherical Earth. You said that NASA lies at every opportunity. Okay. Now, again, it's easy to make assertions like that. It's much harder to prove them. You can see bubbles in water chambers, and you can see green screens, and you can see all kinds of things that NASA does. They would claim that these things make their job easier, and they maybe don't care about, fudging it a little with a green screen because, the public already knows what the truth is. And so we can use a green screen and it won't make that much difference. To you, it does make a difference. To a lot of other people, it doesn't. But this whole idea that, that you have to have this position where NASA can never tell the truth. And that's an audacious statement. That really is. And I can see why you say it, because if NASA has one photo, just one out of the tens of thousands that they've made, but one photo is true of a spherical Earth, your whole movement, and I know you don't like to call it a movement, but your whole understanding of a flat Earth dies immediately if there's one photo. So I understand why you have to take this all or nothing position, because you have no other choice. Now, you're up against a lot of other evidence from other countries who all have weather satellites. Japan has it, China has it, India has it, we have it, the Russians have it. They all have weather satellites. They all take pictures of a spherical Earth. Nobody's taken pictures of a flat Earth. So now you have to include not only NASA in your boogeyman kind of look upon this agency. Now you have to include all the other agencies in the world. And I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah, they're all in a conspiracy together to control us, to make us slaves, all that. And all that sounds good, Dave. It all sounds great, Yeah, well, there's people in control, but there's a real world too. That's the other side of your story. And that is all these nations are in competition with each other. And that's why the Russians and the Americans were in competition to see who could put the first satellite up. And the Russians beat us to it. And so we got into the race, and we were going to beat the Russians. And that's why everybody thinks we have a fake moon landing, because they wanted to top the Russians. The fact is, these people are in competition with each other. They're not going to help each other. And this whole idea that they're in a big cabal, that everything they do is a lie and all this, again, you have to prove that, Dave. You just can't take one or two instances and say, well, here it is right here. Here's an instance of a bubble going up in a water chamber, and that means that NASA lies every time. You can't do that. Okay, that's not the real world. How much more time do I have?
You have 2 minutes and 10 seconds left.
Okay. So while I'm here, and since I finished what you had said, I want to give some things for you to think about maybe in your next talk. And that is, I want to know what you do about the southern stars. You know, we have the northern stars, and then we have the southern stars. And the northern stars are centered around Polaris. The southern stars, Sigma Octantis, it was usually named the South Pole star. I want to know how your model fits in all those southern stars. I also want to know what you do with Antarctica. As we have customarily understood Antarctica as a continent, you have to believe it as at least a 75,000 mile ice wall around your spherical Earth. I want to know how you explain that. I also want to know how you explain how your sun and moon move. What's causing them to move? What's causing them to remain above the Earth 3,000 miles? What is causing them to move at different circumferences around the Earth to create the seasons? That is, how does the sun and moon know to start switching their radii so that they can actually start circling at the Tropic of Capricorn instead of the Tropic of Cancer to
20 seconds.
To create the seasons? In other words, I want to know the forces that are in control of your system. Where are they? If you don't have any, then you really don't have a system. All you have basically is a geometric system. And so I'd like you to answer that. Well, I think that'll get.
Yep. And actually, you can you could have just asked those questions directly because it's now open into the discussion round. But you can start off by answering one of them, and then you can take them point by point if you'd like. However you want to do it, Dave.
Okay. Right. Well, you talked about mirages. I mean, you know, mirages are inverted. Yeah, they're always inverted. Yeah, the Joshua Nowicki one, right? The weatherman explained them as a temperature inversion. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about when we're looking at boats at a distance. It's not a temperature inversion with light bending, you know, above on the layers of hot air or whatever. No, this is an effect we see every time, you know, close to the surface of, you know, close to a surface. We see that when on a hot day, a car is coming towards you on the road, on a straight road. We see that car reflected, you know, just the inversion of that car reflected in the road, you know, looking like it's going through water when there is no water. Yeah, that's the effect. We're not talking about this mythical effect that was described in that Joshua Nowicki thing. That was just made up.
Okay. If you think it's made up, Dave, well, there is a science of lenses and light and understanding how light bends, and it's called refraction. And that is a fact. Okay, that can't be argued with. The question we have is refraction occurring over Lake Michigan when Joshua Nowicki sees the Chicago skyline? Okay.
Indeed.
Now, let me finish first.
Yeah.
Refraction is caused by a temperature inversion. Okay. We have in April and May is the only months he can see the Chicago skyline from the shore of Michigan. You can't see it any other time. The reason is because the water is a lot colder because we just got done with winter and the water has not warmed up yet. It's usually about 38 to 39 degrees. The air temperature, on the other hand, can rise to about 55 or 60 degrees in April and May, because we get some hot days and cool days in April and May until it actually starts getting really hot in June. In that condition, you're definitely going to have air refraction because all it takes is a cooler air on the bottom and warmer air on the top, and you have refraction. As a matter of fact, that refraction can be so severe that it will follow the curvature of the Earth. And that's exactly why Nowicki is seeing those buildings on the Chicago skyline, but cannot see them in other parts of the year.
Interesting, because funnily enough, since that news report came out, people have been sending in photographs of the skyline throughout the year. Okay, and two people, Rob Skiba and Rick Hummer, rented a boat, went across the Great Lakes from one side, heading towards the skyline, were able to see the skyline throughout the entire journey. Yeah, that doesn't happen on a temperature inversion. As you said, it takes very specific conditions to create this thing. These are seen. This skyline is seen throughout the year, and as I said, Rob Skiba and Rick Hummer saw this skyline throughout the journey, across the lake to the skyline. So no, I'm afraid that argument was moot.
All right. Well, I saw the video that Skiba made of that. Okay. Skiba set out to do one thing. He set out to show that the Chicago skyline at 46.7 miles was not a mirage. He was correct. Nobody argues about that. What we're talking about is when Joshua Nowicki is on Grand Mare State Park, 60 miles away, not 47, okay? We shouldn't be able to see any of the Chicago skyline if the earth is curved, yet he sees that. That's the issue, whether you see the skyline or you don't see the skyline. Skiba had a totally different issue to be resolved, and that is, can he see the skyline the whole way from 47 miles out to Chicago? Yes, you can. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But the question is, how much of the building does he see? Every time Skiba takes a picture of the building, the bottom part of the building is not in the picture. And the closer he gets to the Chicago skyline, actually the Willis Tower, the more of that bottom comes up from the horizon that he can see. I saw the video, and I deal with it in my book.
Indeed, but still, different things. But still, 47 miles away, you still shouldn't see even the buildings themselves.
No, that's not true. You won't see the bottom half of the building, but you will see the top half of the building. He shows the pictures, and every picture, the bottom is taken out, and only the top is showing.
Again, we'll have to. I'll have to somehow get this added in, but you shouldn't be able to see the buildings at all. No,
you should. At 47,
that's 47 miles, you shouldn't be able to see the buildings at all.
No, that's false. That's why the big deal was made about him being 60 miles away at Grand Mare State Park, because that's the distance you shouldn't be able to see anything.
Okay, but that also doesn't account for all the other pictures that have been sent in from all the way across the shore of the Great Lakes at different distances, different positions, seeing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know what pictures you're talking about, because they're certainly not on the internet. If you can provide me one that's taken in December, where the water temperature and the air temperature are practically the same, and you want to say that because if that's the case and there can't be any refraction, and then you want to show me a picture taken from Grand Mare State Park that still shows the Chicago skyline, I'll give in. You win. Okay. If you can prove that there was no refraction, but you're going to have that hard to do, because I don't know anybody who's taken such a photograph, Dave.
Well, apparently Josh Nowicki did.
No. That was in April, May. Okay.
Okay. Right.
That's when the inversion is going to occur, because you got the disparity between the water temperature and the air temperature.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a nice experiment for somebody to do, just to disprove your words.
Okay. I think you ought to do it.
I live the other side of the world.
Okay. All right. Well, that reminds me of a video I saw that somebody sent me that you made, and you did a laser test across a body of water. I don't know where that was.
Lake Balaton in Hungary.
Okay. And you actually saw the laser beam go up instead of remain level or go down. I thought, what was your explanation of that?
Well, that is a weird effect, because it certainly wasn't the Earth's curvature, because what we actually saw was the laser go straight along, level to the surface of the lake, and then suddenly curve upwards, bend upwards.
So what does that tell you about light?
Okay, what does it tell me about light? That yes, it can be bent, and I actually explain that with there's an experiment done with a tank of water and somebody shooting a laser through it and adding sugar to the water. When it hits a certain density, that laser bends upwards. Was it bend down?
Okay, great. All right, so we both agree that light can be affected. Sometimes we don't know what's affecting it. Sometimes we do.
Indeed.
Well,
But
you know,
let me.
with the Bedford level experiment that you were talking about before, I think the thing that led you into this whole area of flat Earth, you know, the first guy to do that, Robotham, had put the flags about a half a mile apart or a mile apart, I forget, and he looked out and he didn't see the light. He didn't see the flags going down. Okay, somebody else did that experiment. I think his name was Wallace, and he found that the flags actually were going down. And then a third person did that experiment and saw the flags were going up. So we have 3 different results from the one Bedford level experiment, you know. And this is the thing about science is you have to repeat and repeat and repeat these experiments to make sure that you didn't make any mistakes, to make sure that there's no atmospheric conditions that are going to ruin it for you. And then you have to have peer review of that, where somebody else looks at the data and says, you know, you either did or didn't do it right. You know, you just can't do one experiment and then make a conclusion.
We didn't. What we did was we kind of surmised that because Lake Balaton is a fairly shallow lake, especially where we were, that the humidity was so great, very close to the surface. We were like inches above the water. So we repeated the experiment, I think about 2 feet above the surface, and that's when we chased after the beam. Then, and we got, I believe, 12 kilometers out, and we were still seeing the beam, you know, level.
Yeah, you know,
we took photographs of the, you know, of the beam striking the back of the boat at the level, and every photograph was GPS positioned. So along with that video, there's a spreadsheet that is in the description, which shows the GPS coordinates, the reference to the picture, and you know, and where those positions were plotted on the Google Maps, you know, picture of the lake. So over 12 kilometers, we saw no curvature.
Great. Okay. One thing I would suggest you do, there is a website called Metabunk.
Yes,
and
that's why we did.
The guy who runs that, and he did there was another guy, Dr. Zach, who submitted his results of Lake Balaton, and Mick West, who runs that website, went over these. Now Mick West is, I mean, he's just top notch. As far as I'm concerned, this guy knows more than anybody about this topic. There's 26 pages of dialogue on that website, by the way, and there's probably about 20 pages to each page of dialogue. And so they go through the whole thing. And Mick West tells Dr. Zach where he made his mistakes and to go do it again. And Mick West was trying to be fair. You just say, look, I'll believe you if you show me the evidence, but here's where you made your mistakes. And Dr. Zach agreed. And he's supposed to go out there and do it again sometime to see if he can correct his mistakes. One of the mistakes is, as a matter of fact, if you can't find the level of the laser beam and make sure it's level with the surface of the water, one little mistake at the site where the laser beam originates will exponentially multiply when you go 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. If you're off just a micron from that initial point of the laser beam to where you are on the other side of the lake, their whole experiment is null and void because you haven't gotten the thing level first. And that's one of the things that Mick West points out. You may think you have it level because you have certain equipment, but even that equipment, if it's not set right on the ground, is going to give you a false measurement. So in other words, there's so many things that you have to take into account when you're going to make a claim that this laser beam stays level over this water and is not affected by the curvature of the earth, especially when you yourself see the laser beam go up. I mean, what's making it go up, for Pete's sake? I mean, come on.
The density of the air next to the water.
Okay, so then it can go down too, right?
Right, but it was an optical effect because we in that image where the beam bent upwards, there was a kind of faint image of the reflection of the beam going straight underneath it. So it was a very just an optical effect, but which
Okay.
wasn't apparent when we moved the laser up 2 feet or so. Now,
Okay. Can I go on and ask you some questions?
Okay.
Okay. So with the southern stars, okay. Now in the spherical model.
Well, I'll stop you. I'll stop you there. You know, I'm not like Mr. Flat Earth Hero. I'm just a bloke who's looked at this. I haven't looked at everything. Yeah, I don't have a model for the southern stars. Yeah, what I see of the southern stars is that you see stars moving the other way. You know, again, I haven't really looked into the southern stars. I've never heard people doing this. In my, with me, I've literally found enough evidence to say, that this is a flat Earth. I've moved on to other things. Yeah, I haven't spent time looking at every aspect of it. That's one of the aspects I haven't looked into.
All right. Well, let me challenge you then. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's one thing to take that position. I'm not going to talk about the southern stars. I'm just going to challenge you on your methodology. Okay.
Okay.
If you claim to be a flat earther and now you conclude that you're a flat earther and you admit that you haven't looked at all the evidence and you admit that you don't have answers for certain things, how in the world can you move on to something else and claim that I'm a flat earther and you can't change my mind, so to speak, and that's it, period, full stop?
The globe Earth model does not have answers for hardly anything. Yeah, it has theories built on assumption upon assumption upon assumption. Yeah,
but so does the flat earth.
Indeed. So you can't.
So why do you believe in the flat earth?
Every time you level that argument against me, I can point 3 fingers back at you.
Sure, but I can answer mine. I never said to you
No,
that I can't.
You can give
Okay.
assumption upon assumption upon assumption. It's not an answer. It's a speculation upon based on masses of assumptions.
If you prove it is, just because you say so doesn't make it so.
That's
why I want to ask you about the southern stars, because if you don't give the right answer, then you haven't really defended your model. So I'm at a gas that you would just move on and say,
okay. I can't answer that question because I have not seen the southern stars moving in the way that I've been told they're supposed to move. I can't say that. Yeah, I can't.
Well, that's not the issue I'm dealing with.
Okay, well, okay.
What am I
doing? I'm guessing because you mentioned Sigma Octantis, that you're saying, well, why don't where's the circular motion around this invisible star?
No, I'm not. Okay. What I'm asking you is this. I'm asking you if we can see Polaris on a flat Earth, okay, because the straight up vertical from the middle of that flat Earth, Polaris is going to be no more than 3,000 miles, okay?
Okay. Well, I don't know how high, but go on.
All right. So I'm just setting up the question to you, okay? Now, we do know that there is a southern pole star, Sigma Octantis. We do know the constellations that go around that. Then there's a whole other panorama of southern stars that on the spherical model are below the equator, okay? So my question to you is, where do all those southern stars fit into this flat Earth with a dome over it? Do you believe in the dome, by the way?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so where do all these southern stars fit into that dome with the flat Earth?
What do you mean by fit in?
Well, okay, when you see models of the flat Earth with the dome, all you see are the northern constellations. The Big Dipper, the Little Dipper, all those kind of. But where are the southern constellations that are near the South Pole and a little above the South Pole on the spherical model? Where do you place them in your flat Earth model? Where do they exist?
They would exist at the bottom of that dome structure, the bottom half.
Really?
Of that dome structure.
So how much of the northern stars take up that dome and how much of the southern stars take up that dome?
I do not know because I've not been there.
Okay. So don't you think it's a little curious that you have just as many southern stars as you do northern stars, but yet you're telling me that all these southern stars are going to fit in at the bottom rim of that dome, and then you have the other part of the dome saved for the northern stars. How are you going to be able to see constellations of the southern stars if they're all crunched up at the bottom of this dome?
I never said they were crunched up.
Well, they would have to be. They would have to be. How else are you going to fit them in there?
Sorry, how do you fit
The
them in
northern
there?
the northern stars already take up the volume of the hemisphere of the dome you believe in. So
Okay.
how are you? My question was, how are you going to fit in the southern stars? And if you do, how are you going to preserve the distances between those constellations of the southern stars so that you can actually see constellations in the dome over this flat Earth?
So my personal view, right, this is just my speculation. Again, I haven't been, out there to see what's really going on. So this is my speculation. Okay, we have our known Earth in the center. Okay, we've got the ice wall around the rim. Okay, we've got some measure of ice plain, which is what we call Antarctica. And we have more continents outside of that ice ring. And beyond that is the edge of the dome. And that dome, it's not like a snow globe dome. I think it's a more shallow one. Okay, so there's plenty of room for all the southern stars in there. Yeah.
Well, they were. Well, wait a minute. Aren't the northern stars going to move out beyond this dome that you say is not flush with the flat Earth? The northern stars are going to be.
No, the northern stars are where they would appear. I don't know what you're really saying.
I'm just saying, if you're going to expand the dome so that it's no longer flush with the flat Earth, but extends beyond the flat Earth, the northern stars are going to occupy that area too. So you have the same question. How then are you going to fit in the southern stars in that hemisphere?
The northern stars would occupy the same portion of the sky that we see. I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, but those northern stars go down to the equator, which in your model is the flat Earth.
The northern stars go to the. Sorry?
He's saying that they would go to the edge.
The northern stars go to. No, you don't see. Okay, you don't see in. Literally, you won't see from the North Pole, the southern stars. Yeah, you see in a pyramid type thing. Yeah, in perspective, you see in a pyramid. So the further away those stars are, the more they're hidden by the kind of upward motion of the not upward motion, but the apparent upward motion of the ground. Yeah, it's the way we see. It's perspective. Yeah, that's why you only see.
Dave,
I'm saying you only see a portion because of the way our vision works.
Yeah, I'm not talking about perspective here, how much we can see.
I know you're not talking about it. I'm talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. If you want to go on to another subject, that's great.
No, it's not another subject. I'm telling you why we can't see, or we see only a portion of the sky because of the way our vision works. Yeah, if you go further south, you see a different set of stars because of the way our vision works. Yeah, like being in a long corridor where the floor seems to go upwards to the horizon, and the ceiling seems to go downwards to the horizon to a vanishing point beyond which you cannot see. Same thing.
Yeah. But see, I understand all that, and I've dealt with all that in my book, and you can go read it. But what we're dealing with here, first of all, is even if perspective was an issue, you still haven't told me how are you going to fit in all those southern stars that were in a hemisphere below the Earth in the globe model, but now have to occupy this very, very narrow band around the edge of this dome. And all the northern stars they're not compressed at all. But the fact is, if you put the southern stars in the bottom part of that rim, you're going to affect the northern stars also, because they're all going to be pressured, and you won't have constellations anymore.
You can have all the stars that are available to be seen on Earth in that firmament. Okay, you're stretching all the way down. Okay, so from anywhere in the north, you see a portion of that sky. Anywhere in the so-called south, you see a different portion of that sky. That's it. It's just perspective.
Let me interject real quick, because I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on this part. And just so that you get all three of your questions in, Dr. Sungenis, you might want to go to number 2, because we are pushing at nearly the 90-minute mark.
Okay, great. All right, let me do that. Okay, Dave, I want to ask you, let me go on to the third question first, then I'll come back to the second one. The third one deals with gravity and inertial forces and dynamic forces and all that. So what I want to know is, in your model, the sun and moon are going around a flat disk. They go around the Tropic of Cancer in the springtime, or actually June 21st would be their going around the Tropic of Cancer. Then the sun and moon will go around the equator in September 21st, and then they will go around the Tropic of Capricorn in December 21st. So we have the sun moving from one radii to another radii to a third radii, and that third radii is actually twice the radii of the first one, Tropic of Cancer. So that means the sun's going to have to go around twice as fast at the Tropic of Capricorn as it does in the Tropic of Cancer. We also have to have a sun that can remain 3,000 miles above the Earth. And we also have to have some kind of compensation for the fact that if the sun and moon are going to go around at this rapid speed per day around this 75,000 mile ice wall, what is stopping the sun and moon from going off into space? As you had talked about the plane going off into space, what's stopping the sun and moon from going off into space because of the centrifugal force that's going to cause them to go in that direction? So you have three problems here. Answer why the sun and moon can go around the Earth without going off into space, how the sun stays 3,000 miles above the flat Earth, and how it changes speed when it changes the seasons.
Right. Well, first of all, when I said about the plane going off into space, I was talking about the ball Earth model, not the flat Earth model. Yeah. So I'm in my model. There is no space, no such thing as space. No, the firmament is all there is. Okay. So the sun and moon don't go off into space because there is no space. Right?
What's at the edge then that would stop them? You say the firmament is at the edge?
Yes.
Okay, so why doesn't the sun bang into the firmament?
Well, why doesn't the Earth get flung out into space when it hits the focus of an elliptical orbit? Yeah?
I don't know, because I don't believe in that system. Okay, I'm just talking about your system.
Okay. I don't know. I do not know what's keeping the sun and the moon up. As far as I'm concerned, it's their lights in the sky, a greater light and lesser light. Okay, I don't know how they work. That's that's prerogative of the Most High.
Are they okay? I understand that. Are they? So you claim ignorance on that one?
Well, yes. Just as every all science is based on ignorance, just with ideas, opinions, theories.
Is your idea of a mirage for a boat going over the horizon, is that just also science that just doesn't know what it's doing?
It's not science, it's observation. It's what we see time and time again, every time we look and zoom in on something far away.
Well, I think other people who study, that's a science. The art of using lenses and air refraction and all that is science. I mean, what else could it be?
Well, science is not science anymore. It's a question of preserving the status quo, and this is what you're doing.
Really, a geocentrist preserving the status quo? I don't think so.
Well, you're preserving your last bastion of the status quo, as far as you're concerned.
Is that right? Okay. So you admit you don't know anything about the forces that keep the sun doing what it's doing, why it changes speed, all that. I just want to make that clear.
No, but in the geocentric model, or sorry, the heliocentric model, the Earth is supposedly in an elliptical orbit.
I know. I told you don't need to worry about that because I don't believe in that. I'm with you on that. Okay. Right. But what I'm trying to say to you, Dave, is look, if you're going to present a model, you just can't present a geometric model and say, done, finite, no problem.
What I'm
have
saying,
to be able to explain this to people. If you're going to take the time to explain about boats and horizons and laser beams and all this scientific stuff, and then you throw up your hands when it comes to inertial forces, dynamic forces, wait a minute, that are supposed to keep your sun moving and doing what it's supposed to do on a flat earth, and yet you say, well, I claim ignorance, and that's up to God. I don't know. I'm moving on. I mean, you're contradicting yourself.
it's arrogance for me to say that I can possibly understand what's going on, holding the sun up in the sky. Yeah, it's ignorance for me to do that. Yeah.
Well, you know what?
An
I hate
arrogance.
to crash with you, brother, but I would say it's ignorance for you to move on without knowing what the answer is and saying, I'm a flat earther, no questions asked.
I'm a bloke who knows what I know, right? And
Okay.
you know,
All right.
I don't know because I've not been there. There's very little of data I can actually pull out to see exactly how it works. I don't know how it works. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me go on to the next one. You want to ask me a question, by the
You
way?
don't know how it works. If you know, if the Earth is you know, in the center, you know, what is keeping the sun going around the Earth?
Oh, thank you for asking. That's easy.
Oh, is
Okay.
it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that's a real easy one. Because in physics, which is a science, okay, a rotating universe will create inertial forces called Coriolis, centrifugal, and Euler forces. And all those forces combined together keep the sun and the stars rotating around the central axis of the universe. In the Newtonian system, which is what the heliocentrists believe, they believe that those inertial forces are fictitious because they can't fit them into their system. And so they say the reason that the Earth is going to go around the sun is because the Earth has inertia, and that's modified by the centripetal force, which is the gravitational force that pulls it in, and it's going to combine to make a circle so that the Earth goes in a circle. Okay, each of us has our physics that we go by to answer the question about where the forces come to move those celestial bodies. You're the only one that doesn't. Okay.
Okay. So, so you can make up a theory, okay, an opinion, and now somehow that's fact. Just because
No. In order for you to say it's not true, you have to disprove it.
Okay, well, you know, if I come up with the banana theory that that, you know, makes the numbers work out, does that mean that I have more information than you do?
No, because that's easy to disprove.
Well, no, I could, you know, this is the beauty of mathematics. Yeah, you can actually create a banana theory, and you know, say that the sun and moon move around the Earth because of the, you know, a relationship with the shape of the banana, and you know, as long as the numbers work out, great. There you go.
No, because we base it on evidence first. And the evidence first is this: when I drop my pen, okay, it's going to fall. Something's pulling it down. Okay.
Oh, Newtonian forces. Are we going with that? Are we?
Well, I'm just asking you. Do you have an explanation why this thing falls down when I let go of it?
Density and buoyancy.
Density and buoyancy. Okay, let's go there. Good topic. All right, density and buoyancy. Okay. Now, any scientist worth his salt is not going to deny that buoyancy takes part in how an object falls. Okay. What he will say to you is it's not only buoyancy. Because let's say you have three layers. You got oil, water, and gas, and you mix them up in a cylinder. Okay. And then eventually what's going to happen to those three elements? They're going to separate. The less dense one is going to go to the top. The more dense one's going to go to the bottom. There you have it, buoyancy. The question is, what's keeping the most dense one tied to the Earth?
Okay. What's keeping the most dense one tied to the Earth?
Right. So the other two can go on top of it. What's keeping the whole system tied to the Earth?
Simply because the densest one is going to be at the bottom, because everything else will rise above the most densest thing. Sorry,
Maybe you don't get the question.
No, I don't.
Okay. So
maybe I should ask a question to answer that question. Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you had a gas bottle containing 1 kilogram of liquid helium. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And you had a 1 kilogram weight, and you evacuated the the liquid helium into a weather balloon, and you let go of both of them, what would happen?
You let go of both of what? The balloon and the
helium
helium?
balloon and the 1 kilogram weight.
Say it again. Somebody interrupted you there. Say it again.
You have a kilogram of helium in a gas bottle. Yeah. And you have a 1 kilogram weight. You fill up the helium balloon with all the helium. Yeah. So you got 1 kilogram of helium and 1 kilogram weight, and you let go of them. What will happen?
What will happen? How big is the container that holds the helium?
Well, it's a helium balloon holding 1 kilogram of helium.
You said you had a container of 1 kilogram of helium. I'm thinking of a capsule.
You have a gas bottle which contains 1 kilogram of liquid helium.
Okay. And how big is the gas bottle, and what's it made of?
Well, it doesn't matter, because that's just holding the helium before the experiment starts. Okay?
You're putting it in a balloon.
Okay. I wasn't following you at all.
Okay. So you have a gas bottle of helium that contains 1 kilogram of helium. You fill up a weather balloon with 1 kilogram of helium. Yeah.
From the bottle?
Yes.
From the bottle?
From the bottle.
Okay.
And then you have a 1 kilogram weight and 1 kilogram of helium. Yeah. You let go of both. What will happen?
Well, obviously the helium balloon is going to go up because it has
Why
less.
is that? Why is that? Because they both weigh a kilogram.
Listen, Dave, I already had told you that we accept buoyancy. Okay. So don't try to pin buoyancy on me as if I rejected it. All right.
Oh.
What I'm asking you is, what keeps the most dense part of that 3 element solution that I gave you tied to the Earth?
Because it can't go anywhere in relation to the less dense items.
In other words, Dave, let's say this. Let's take I take that cylinder of those 3 liquids and I throw it up into the air. Now the buoyancy is still going to be in effect. You're still going to have the most dense at the bottom, the middle dense in the middle, and the less dense at the top. But what causes that whole system now to fall back to the Earth?
Well, as I said, the less dense doesn't fall back to the Earth because it's held up by the most dense.
Yeah, but how is the most dense going to fall back to the Earth?
Because it can't go anywhere. It can't go anywhere in relation to the less dense.
Okay, so let's say we do this. We'll put dirt in the cylinder, which is the same thing you find on the Earth, and we'll put the gas in the top of the dirt, and we'll put water. We'll put water in the middle and gas on the top. And if I throw that cylinder up, is it going to fall to Earth?
The cylinder.
Yeah, cylinder holding these 3 liquids. Is it going to fall back to Earth?
If that cylinder, with its contents, is more dense than the air around it, then it will fall to the Earth.
Yeah, I guess I'm not making myself clear. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this to you.
It's the theory of down.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to ask him is, what if he's basing it on density? What keeps the most dense object tied to the Earth? And he's trying to say that it's still density.
In other words, I think you're asking, just because something is more dense, and dense has to do with the mass per area, right? I mean, okay, so if something's denser, he's asking you, what intrinsically makes that something that is attracted to go towards the Earth, just because it's denser?
Because it is denser, and there's in relation to the things that are less dense to it. There's nowhere it can go. It can't go above something that's less dense, so it has to be below.
You understand that, Dave? I mean, Steve?
No.
No, okay.
Well, I don't.
Because it weighs more, right? Is that what you're going with? Because it weighs more than the air around it is going to fall.
It's less dense. It's more dense than the air around it.
Yeah, he has a point.
You're saying, right, that it's either some kind of Newtonian force between 2 objects, or some curvature of space-time that things are seem to be attractive. Neither of those things, work.
Well, okay, here, I got an example for you, Dave. I just thought of something. Do you believe that moons go around Jupiter?
Well, I believe that there's lights in the sky which have their own paths. Yes.
Okay. And I meant to ask you this before, whether you believe the sun and the moon are substantive things or just lights. Can you clarify that?
I would say they're lights.
Without any substance? Do they have material substance?
Again, this is speculation because I've not been there, but yes, I believe they're lights.
Okay, let's say Jupiter, which doesn't have a light, is that a substantive thing we call a planet?
It's a light. It's a light in the sky.
But it doesn't have substance. Like you have substance, I have substance.
It's a light in the sky, no substance.
No substance. Okay, so these little moons that we see circling Jupiter, what are they?
They're also lights in the sky.
They're lights. So we have lights circling lights.
Lights moving in relation to other lights, yes.
Okay, and so it's just like, can you describe light without a source? What is that? What kind of light are you talking about here?
I don't know. One example is sonoluminescence.
Is what luminescence?
Sonoluminescence.
Sonoluminescence. Okay.
Yes.
So so how about the sun? Is that a substantive thing that lets off light, or is that just light?
A light. Light in the sky. I don't have.
How is that light created?
I don't know. Nor do you.
Well, we do have theories about hydrogen turning.
We do have theories, and I can. No. We do have theories, and I can come up with a banana theory that tells you.
Well, we do see solar flares, and we do get heat from the sun. So
again, I can come up with a banana theory that gives you why solar.
Okay,
flares.
so
like bananas, yeah.
On the banana thing, I think we'll go ahead and because we did go over 90 minutes, which was good. I mean, it was a good discussion, but I think we can agree to go on to questions from the audience.
Yeah, we got some super chats and we got some questions, and I got a few things I gotta ask. I can't help myself. But we're gonna get the super chats out of the way first. Ethan had asked, at some point, can you talk about pressure in a pressurized dome? It is equal at all points, but that is obviously not the case. So why do we have? Basically, he's asking, I think, why do we have a pressure gradient of the atmosphere?
Not the pressure gradient again. You know what happened last time?
It's a super chat, man.
It all fell apart. Anyway, go ahead, Dave.
Well, we seem to have a pressure gradient because, again, we have different gases in the atmosphere, and we have different densities of gases. Yeah.
Okay, and
okay, so Dave, what keeps the dome on the flat Earth?
I don't know. What's on the other side of the universe?
Well, whoa! Wait a minute. You talked about buoyancy, and now you have something solid and very heavy, a lot of mass, that's on the top, whereas you told us that all the dense things go to the bottom. So how does that figure into your model?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I go with what the Old Testament says. It was a space created, separating waters from waters. I don't know.
Wait a minute. You told me at the beginning of the show that you didn't believe in any religion. So how can you quote from the Old Testament?
I don't believe in religion. The Old Testament is not a religious book.
Really? Okay.
The Old Testament. Wait, the Old Testament is not a religious book?
It is not a religious book. It's a book of history, law, and guidance. What happens is other people put their own holy religious book on top of it and create a religion around it. Like the New Testament.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I would still consider it religious text. I mean, even if somebody
so that we get into
not a religious text.
Well, it's not a secular text.
Next question, real quick.
Next question. Another super chat. Ask Dave what the definition of a scientific theory is, please. Do you have to know
scientific theory?
Yeah,
it's an opinion that stands only as long as until another opinion that better matches observations comes along.
Whose opinion?
Well, whoever proposes a theory.
Okay.
Barbara, do you want to answer that? What your definition of a scientific theory is?
Yeah, a theory is third step of a process that started when you found some evidence that led you to a certain reasoning where you made a what they call a hypothesis of why this thing occurred that you saw, no matter what it is. You have a hypothesis, and then with a hypothesis, you then begin to test that against other things that you know or other experiments that you will perform to see if the hypothesis can be sustained when you do those other things, the extra experiments or other things that you know. And then if it survives that stage, then it may possibly go to what they call the theory stage. And that is where you now have enough evidence that you begin to make preliminary conclusions about this evidence and about why you're seeing it. It doesn't mean you have proof. You just have a theory, because science really has a hard time proving anything, because that third step of being able to prove something means there can be no other alternatives existing that will answer the evidence you saw except the one you found. That's hard to reach, if ever. So, but a theory is like between a hypothesis and provable.
I've been asked to clarify that because I don't think you're quite right on that. Let me try to clarify and see if you agree, Robert. First of all, a hypothesis can become a theory, but it's usually incorporated into a theory. It's usually about the fourth or fifth step. The first step in any science is
you talk a little slower. I can't understand.
Oh, sure. Let me clarify and see if you agree. First, I think the first step is actually. Okay. Well, the audience is like, Steve, get in here. Okay, so I think the first step is a guess. I think a good scientist will make a guess, then he'll make conjecture. He'll devise an experiment. He'll devise a hypothesis, get a null hypothesis, and then if he thinks he has enough evidence to reject the null, then he'll call the hypothesis, the hypothesis to be the case, right? And eventually that will either get merged into a theory or become a theory itself. But a theory is a confirmed model that has been sustained over a period of time by repeated observation and experimentation. So it's not in between anything. The theory is the highest you can get. There's nothing higher than a theory in science. There's nothing. Even laws fall under a theory.
Right. Okay, I would agree with you on that. And I think the thing I left out was that the theory remains a theory because it's been done by someone else. And in other words, it's been repeated.
Yeah. But a theory cannot be proven by definition. There's no such thing as a provable theory. Science is not in the business to prove anything. Science explains. Because like you said, once and you're right on this, once something is proven, you can't change it. It is proven. It's done. Right. And so I do agree with you there. That's why you never say a scientific theory is proven, because it is falsifiable, right? So you can't prove something and have a falsification criteria.
Let me add this. There's a lot of scientists out there who basically, like with the theory of evolution. Mm-hmm. Okay. I know a lot of scientists like Stephen Gould, for one, and a lot of his colleagues who basically say their theory about evolution is a fact.
It is a fact. Yeah, but fact's not the same as proven. It is a fact. Yeah, we do observe evolutionary things, but maybe not. We'll do that another time. But fact and proven are not the same thing by any stretch.
You and I would disagree, because I think the terminology is being mixed up a little there to make a fact something less than provable. But I think
that's a whole other debate, though.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
That's a whole other debate.
I know people are like, yes.
Let's
No, but I just want to bring that up. Okay, so
I think heliocentrism was, a proven fact.
Oh, come on now, Dave.
It's heliocentrism fact, but it's not proven. Again,
let's go to the next super chat.
Fair enough. Okay, so next super chat. We have a lot of good questions too, but I'm gonna have to do the super chats first. This one, no question, just well-needed booze for Steve from Steve Bauman. Thank you. I had actually bought whiskey yesterday, and I'm telling you right here and now, after this is over, you ain't going to see me for a while. I need a drink. Another one was, with buoyancy and gravity laws, along with mass and volume, we can predict acceleration. How does acceleration models work in a flat Earth? So how does something accelerate on a flat Earth?
Oh, me? I don't. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I'm not going to be sitting around trying to make up. Formulas and what have you. It is one of the fundamental, rules of this place, that things fall at a particular rate. I mean, again, I can pretend to be scientific and label it and give a theory that might include strange forces between objects or curvatures of space-time, but I'd just be making up stuff just like those two characters do.
The allegedly Dave theory.
Yeah.
Before Steve asks you a question, I want to ask two. One, and then I want to say one other thing. Dave, you made a comment in your opening statement about how you would believe that we went to the moon, and that was for them to leave a camera there that would live stream in 1969. I just wanted to clarify. I don't think that existed in 1969, so that wouldn't have been possible. There was no live streaming back then.
Well, hang on a second. Hang on a second.
No, but there was they did have ancient
Go ahead.
Wi-Fi. They did have ancient Wi-Fi, so they were probably on that from the obelisk.
That's true. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, they had a camera that they left on the moon. Yeah, that was to film the ascent stage of the lunar lander.
Yeah.
And well, if they could have a camera that they could remotely control, left on the moon, why couldn't they have a high definition camera pointed at the Earth all the time, sending.
I can't tell you.
I noticed. Are we back on?
No, not yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
you are.
We are.
Okay,
now.
we are.
Yes.
We are. We aren't. We are. We aren't. If you're listening to us
We
out
are.
there in YouTube world, I'm not sure what happened there, but we lost Dr. Sungenis for a second, and then YouTube lost us. So maybe you're right, Dave. Maybe they don't want us. They don't want the truth getting out there.
The Illuminati, man. I'm telling you, they
So
found us.
before Steve asks a question, and then we close out and let you guys make your final statements. I was just asking Dave. He made mention to the continents on the outside of the Antarctic wall, and I was just looking for that to be clarified just a little bit, and what he meant by continents and how he came to think that was the case outside of that wall. So you were talking about Admiral Byrd when we dropped out.
Yes, Admiral Byrd on his last, I think it was Operation High Jump. He came back and did a interview on something called the Longines chronoscope, and on it he said that beyond what he called the South Pole, the other side of Little America, which was their base there, there was a continent the size of the continental US that was uninhabited, with masses of resources, coal, oil, uranium, all sorts of things. And he literally told how he found this continent. Now, there was a map that surfaced a while back. It was shown in a newspaper 100 years ago, and this is supposedly 1,000-year-old map. And on that map is the continents that we're used to strung around the North Pole, and beyond the ice wall are these continents, and one of them kind of matches the description that Admiral Byrd put out. Interestingly, after Admiral Byrd came back, I think it was 1958. don't quote me, but when he came back, the Encyclopedia Americana for that year lists under Antarctica that it has a dome at 13,000 feet. It says it right there in the encyclopedia. So yeah.
Robert, do you want to touch that?
All right. So the Encyclopedia Britannica has an article that says there's a dome that's 13,000 feet above Antarctica, the continent.
Encyclopedia Americana.
Americana. Okay. It says that there is a dome 13,000 feet high above Antarctica.
Yes, that's what it says, not my words.
And what's the date of that Encyclopedia Americana? Do you know?
I'm pulling this out of my head. You know, I think it's 1958.
1958. And you don't know the volume number, page number, or anything like that?
No, I'm just doing this from memory. I don't have all my notes here with me or anything. And
okay. Well, I'm going to give you my email address toward the end of the program, and I want you to mail me that information because I'd like to see.
Absolutely will.
Okay. So
Okay,
I have
Steve?
no way to verify. What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob. I didn't mean to cut you. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you
Okay.
finished.
I have no way to verify what you're saying. Okay. So, and if you can't give me the citation, I really can't use that as evidence.
What the citation was is this, and I'll send it to you. It's 1958 Encyclopedia Americana. Says 1958. See what it actually says is by a great dome of snow and ice, which is toward its center, reaching in 13,000 feet in elevation. It's talking about a dome of snow and ice.
No, that's I don't know what
No,
you're.
that's why I have the thing right here. I mean, I'm literally looking at the encyclopedia that you're referencing. It is
Okay.
58
But
Encyclopedia.
they can still send it to you, Dr. Sungenis.
I'll send you what I have. Yeah.
But
All right, but I just want to
Absolutely.
clarify that it's not a dome in the sense that David was talking about a dome previously.
No.
It's just
no.
an ice wall or a snow wall or whatever, 13,000 feet high. That I can understand.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a dome of snow and ice. But again, interpretation, I guess, right? But we'll get that to you. So let's get the last couple super chats. And before I do real quick, I do want to mention, because it was one of the other super chats, Dave, if you're not unaware, the problem that you have is that when you invoke things like buoyancy, you should be aware that buoyancy, the formula for it, has gravity in it. So you can't have buoyancy without gravity. It is part of the actual formula.
Gravity
and density is not a force. Just
gravity is not is a tendency for something to drop when you let go. Oh no, sorry.
The force of down.
There is a density. There's a tendency for things to drop when you let go of them. Yes, it's not gravity. Gravity is just a theory, right, or a set of theories to account for that phenomenon.
But do you know what a force is? A force is an actual thing that causes something to change direction.
Well, now you're talking about Newtonian.
Well, hang on. If you have something that's going to, if I drop, like he was showing, if Robert drops something, there has to be a force acting upon what he dropped in order to.
Now you're talking about
that is what a force means.
Now you're talking about Newtonian forces. Which
you could use anything you want. Use any kind of force you want. It doesn't matter. A force is a force is a force. Robert, would you agree?
Apparently, you can talk over me if you want, but I'm telling you, yeah, that you're talking about a Newtonian force, which was apparently disproved by Einstein. It's not a force. It's supposedly a curvature of space-time.
He's not. Robert, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think you can define a force as something that makes another thing accelerate. But Dave's already admitted that he can't explain acceleration.
Yes, because any change of motion of the object is a change in vector, which is acceleration. Right.
Change in motion or speed, you have an acceleration.
Yeah, either the magnitude or the direction. Correct.
How many more super chats are we at?
Just one more, I think, or two more. So KC had said, explain, Dave, can you explain how Earth casts a shadow if it's flat?
Earth casts a shadow as it's flat.
Yeah, because we can actually see the shadow of the Earth on like the moon. There's actually Earth shine. We can actually see reflections. We can see the shadow of the.
We can see reflections. Can we see the Earth reflected in the moon?
That's called Earth shine. Yeah, pretty cool actually.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure I can explain that, but you know what? I can't also explain, according to the Ball Earth model, how come we see the Earth and the sun and the moon, at the same time during a lunar eclipse.
Yeah, I don't know how you would on a flat Earth model either. Okay, and one last one. And by the way, which is kind of weird, Robert's at least geocentrism. All this math actually works if you make it work for this. I mean, that's what's funny. His model actually would. I think you'd be better off being a geocentrist in this regard, Dave, because his shit would work actually in some regards. So, yeah, whatever. I can't believe I'm siding with you on this, Robert. I'm never gonna live this down, dude. Last one. And I don't know why somebody asked this, but it's a super chat, so I got to do it, Dave. They asked, explain radiation pressure.
Radiation pressure.
Yeah, have you heard the term before?
No, I haven't. If it's not, somebody. I remember debating with some physicists and PhD students. I don't know if they're calling it thermal pressure.
Yeah, it's similar. Yeah, same thing. I mean, basically, it's just a pressure exerted from an electromagnetic wave, such as like you have like gamma pressure in a star, like he was talking about where the light comes from, right? You kind of have to explain why we see lights in the sky, and a star is held up by gamma pressure overcoming the force of gravity without equilibrium. So when he's asking you,
we
like,
know that, do we?
yeah, actually, we could demonstrate.
How do we know that?
Because of neutrinos. We've actually predicted what energy levels of neutrinos we should detect, and guess what? We detected those neutrinos at those energy levels. So we made a prediction and we discovered that. So that's how.
Sorry, you detect them. You say we. You
scientists. The people that do this stuff. Yeah, and you can say they're wrong, but you know what? That's just okay. Well, they never detected it. They're conspiracy. Okay, great.
Again, we have assumption upon assumption, and that's called science. That's called, a law of nature. Yeah, we have laws of nature all the time that don't actually match up to reality. So, when you say we have found this, I don't hold that.
I think that's all the super chats.
Can I ask you a question,
Sure.
Dave?
We still in the question and answer bit, are we?
We're getting ready to close off. Give you guys the opportunity to make your closing statements. He just wanted to ask one more real quick.
Of course.
Yeah, because you quoted from the Old Testament. I want to know: do you believe the Bible first, and do you believe the Bible teaches a flat Earth with a dome?
Indeed.
Okay.
It does.
Just wanted to know.
Okay. All right. Now we'll let you guys make your closing statements to kind of wrap up your position, and then we'll call it a night. So we'll start with you, Dave.
Okay. Well, as I said, I'm just a normal bloke here. I know what I see in this world, and you know what? The ball Earth model does not make sense. Yeah, we're taught this model from childhood at a time where we cannot analyze the information that we're given. Yeah, we take it in as truth, and it becomes the foundation of our reality. With our own senses, we have a picture of this Earth. We have to be taught this ball Earth, spinning ball Earth universal model. Yeah, it's a fabrication, and when you start just looking at it, when you start testing it, you find it doesn't hold up. And I'm not trying to tell anybody the Earth is flat. All I'm trying to tell people is go and look for yourself. Go and look, and don't just blindly accept what these so-called scientists and experts tell you. Go and look for yourself. That's all.
Okay, and do you want to go ahead and plug your channel too while you're here, where people can catch you and keep up with you?
Sure. My YouTube channel is dmurphy25. My website is allegedlydave.com.
Okay. All right. Dr. Sungenis?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having this program. Thank you for Dave and all your input. I'm going to go off on what you just said, because I think that needs to be balanced for the sake of the audience. And that is, we want to go out and look for ourselves. That's true. And this represents, I think, the struggle that I had mentioned earlier that each generation has to go through. We take for granted some of the things that we've been taught because we have authorities over us and they teach us that. We're never going to get away from that, okay? If it happens where there's enough groundswell where people come to disagree with what the traditional authority has said, and they can form a consensus and they can demonstrate by evidence that their position is more viable than the historic position, great. I applaud people for doing that. And that's the way the world works. That's how we progress. That's how we advance, because some things we believe are wrong and we need to get out of that and get to something better, something more truthful. By the same token, I'd have to say that in your presentation of the evidence for flat Earth, I find a lot of holes. I find a lot of things missing. We talked about gravity. We talked about how your sun moves and all those kinds of things. You have no answer for it. So I think if you want to sincerely advance the discussion so that we get out of something traditional that may not be good, it would behoove you to do a lot more research into the dynamics of your system so that you can explain it to somebody instead of saying, well, I'm drawing the line here and I'm moving on. You can't really do that if you expect somebody to be convinced of your system, because there's going to be people a lot smarter than you are who are going to get down to the nitty gritty of your system, and they're going to tear it apart. And unless you can answer those questions, your movement is going to die. Okay. So also I want to, can I plug my book?
Of course.
Of course.
Okay. So here we have it, Flat Earth, Flat Wrong. You can get this at www.flatearthflatwrong.com, and you can get the PDF for $10, and it's pretty thick. You get 738 pages of information for $10, and you can also buy it in book form if you want. So that's it.
Okay, awesome.
All
Well,
right.
thanks to both of you guys for coming on. Dave, a little bit better this time around than your first time.
Yeah, a little bit better, but did still detect, a panel there.
Well,
I know you did join in, Dave.
Yeah, well, we have to. We obviously don't actually agree with either one of you, but for the most part, we kept out of this. I think you enjoyed your time better. You enjoyed your time better this time, Dave.
Yeah. Hardly balanced questions, though. I'm sure there were flat earthers.
You know what? But honestly, those were from the outside chat.
Those are from the audience. We didn't ask any of our questions.
If you didn't notice, the main person I even tried to think that I corrected was Robert. So
yeah, those were from the audience, Dave. We're innocent in this. Remember, you don't have to leave mad like you did last time. We're all good today. Okay. So I wanted to also plug one thing they're having on the Geek Room tomorrow. They're having a roast of your favorite atheist content creators tomorrow night. It's at Steve, what time is it?
2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern.
It's at 5:30 Eastern. Steve and I are actually judging it, so we will be on there judging, and you're gonna have Cat Brony, Unholy Mole, Mr. Atheist, Not Joe Witness, Tony Reed, Jackson Wheat, Shannon Q, Prophet of Zod, Cirrus, Godless Iowan, Godless Engineer, and Pelagia, all roasting each other. And so that will be a lot of fun. Steve and I are looking forward to hosting. So used to saying Steve and I hosting.
Yeah, no, we don't get to host this one. We just get to vote on which
judging is actually what we do best anyway.
Yes.
So judging will be right up our alley.
Yes.
They're also, interestingly enough, the Geek Room is changing their name. So if you want to tune in tomorrow to find out what that new name will be at the end of the roast, then do that. That's at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific tomorrow.
And I can tell you right now, it's not Boys with Toys. Okay, that's
what I voted for, though.
Yeah, we try to convince them, but they decided not to go with that. So
we will still be here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm can't tell you with what yet because Soul Phone canceled this morning, so we are going to do something different. But we will be here, despite not having them here as well. But just look at Twitter tomorrow. If you don't follow us on Twitter, follow us at Nonsec Show, NONSEQ Show, and you'll be able to find out what that wound up being. But we will put that together later on this evening for you guys. So thanks again to Dr. Sungenis and allegedly Dave for joining us for this discussion. Thanks to Steve and Dave as well. And I'm Kyle Curtis. We'll see you tomorrow at 8.
Good night.